sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. This is a podcast where I talk to my sister who is a therapist. My name's Virginia Jones. I'm a stand-up, and this is Laura Ryan.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan. My sister, Virginia Jones, is a stand-up comedian, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist.
If this is your first time to the show, welcome. Hope you enjoy it. We love you already. You look great today. If you're a repeat listener or a subscriber.
You look like you might have lost weight.
Have you lost a little weight? Did you have New Year's goals? Hashtag goals. Laura is bringing the topic this week. Laura, what is our topic?
So I don't have a very sexy title, but we're going to go with neuroplasticity and life ruptures.
I don't know what you think is not sexy about that. That has all the sex appeal of a shrink wrapped egg in a 7-Eleven. Like, oh boy.
That's what the kids are trying to get into.
Yes.
This is like skibbity toilet, man. We're getting into it. So, yeah. Okay. So the inspiration for this episode came from Trevor Noah, a fellow podcaster.
We're the same, us and Trevor Noah.
Yes. We have the same level of guests. We have the same level. He has Amazon ads. We have Amazon ads.
Oh, yeah, we look at ads on Amazon.
You're a comedian. He's a comedian.
That's right. We have that.
So he has a new podcast called What Now? Shameless plug for my boyfriend. And he interviewed Sam Altman. Do you know who Sam Altman is?
No, I do not.
Okay. He is the CEO of OpenAI.
Okay.
ChatGPT.
Oh, I know who that is. Okay, please continue.
Okay. So did you hear about what happened to him recently?
He was fired from his job, and a week later, he was rehired for his job.
Yes. And he also was up for the award for CEO of the Year.
It's real mixed messages, right? It's just coming thick and fast. We love you. We hate you. We love you.
Yeah, that is basically the workforce today. But I was really inspired by his story about what it was like to find out he had been fired. So I'm just going to read what I transcribed. So Sam said, "I'm still recompiling reality, to be honest. I went through the full range of human emotion in a short period of time. It all happened on a Friday afternoon. And the next morning, the board members started calling me and asking me how I would feel about coming back. And I had really complicated feelings about that. This was a very painful thing for me personally. As a human, I was in Las Vegas at F1. I was in my hotel room and I got a call from the board. Confusion was the dominant emotion. It was unsettling. It didn't feel real. I'm still a little in shock and just trying to pick up the pieces. I think it would be impossible to go through anything like this and have it not take a toll on you. AGI and my family are the two things that I really care about. It was unbelievably painful. Losing my dad was much worse, but there are echoes of it here. The sense of confusion and loss was so overwhelming."
Also, when we talked about this a little bit before, so public. Like, it's not like if you or I got fired. It was on every paper.
It was like the number one Twitter thing, and it was everywhere.
The main guy at this very famous AI grouping had lost his job. Like, everybody knows that the job that you loved, that you dedicated your life to, you've been fired from.
Right. And now you have to go into your little brain and restructure everything to reflect this new reality. And that's kind of what I was interested in, because I think we've all experienced life ruptures. Like, I don't know about you, but I had a moment where I was sitting on the couch, eating a sandwich, minding my own business. My mother walks into the living room and tells me my father's dead.
I had not the same experience, but I was hungover after Halloween, thinking about getting dinner, and yet I got a call from my mother telling me my father was dead.
Yeah.
And for both of us, this is the weird part, same guy.
Wow, that is wild. And on the same day even. Because I was going to say, my dad also died on November 1st.
Weren't you really? Sidebar, Laura and I started having amazing conversations about, like, via text about our dad's death. And first we started telling his life story in emojis, right?
I forgot about that.
Born, parents, school, marriage, church. And then because my father died, like, basically of congestive heart failure, hamburger, 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 pizza, pizza.
It was very insensitive the way that we made sense.
It was very insensitive, but it's still very funny to me. And then we started talking about what we were going to eat to combat the sadness of it. Like, I had a glass and I'm going directly to Veggie Grill and I'm getting the buffalo wing salad, which is a 700 calorie salad, which shouldn't exist in the world.
No,
but that's what I'm going to eat.
Absolutely not. Yeah. So Sam's story reminded me of that. And it also reminded me, so there's a book called The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge, Doidge, MD. And it's all about neuroplasticity. And it reminded me, when I was hearing Sam's story, it reminded me of this idea of like, I have to unpack my whole brain and I have to reorg everything. And there's an article in Psychology Today by Deborah Davis, Ph.D., called How the Brain Rewires as We Grieve.
And also, like, we were talking about this yesterday, or else I was just thinking about it really hard. Another place where this really applies is breakups, especially when I was young. If I missed the person after I broke up with them, I would think that's my brain telling me that I was wrong.
No.
And that we should get back together. But
no,
that happens to every person. And it's because they have a pattern burned into their brain of being with this person. And their brain is just trying to make that real. Like, hey, remember we used to wake up next to this person and now they're not here. How come is that? It doesn't mean that you're supposed to be together. You're fated to be together. It doesn't mean anything one way or the other. It just means you're used to them.
So there's an article in Psychology Today by Deborah Davis called How the Brain Rewires as We Grieve. And so it says, thanks to this neural map, your brain requires very little computing power to navigate life with your person. Instead of each moment being a shock or an unexpected surprise with loads of new negotiations and decisions to make life every day, it flows more easily with a rich, filled-in neural map of predictable routines, customary habits, realistic expectations, a recognizable presence, and a familiar feel. When your partner dies or ends your relationship, your grieving brain must learn to make sense of their absence and redraw its neural map to reflect this new reality, particularly in the absence, if it happens suddenly or with little warning, like the way our dad died, or you expected and counted on spending many more years together. This learning process is a huge and complicated undertaking.
And it's interesting that she mentions you're grieving the person either because they left or they died. Like, because the people who leave me are dead to me. Like, in my mind, they are dead. So it's the same.
Well, your relationship with them is dead.
Yeah.
I remember in recent years, I had this weird premonition that maybe 2 days before my boyfriend broke up with me, I woke up and I had this feeling that like this thing we have is never going to be the same. And I was correct, because what you're trying to do is your brain is trying to take this information that it's been leaning on and created, and we've developed these neural pathways, and it's trying to reorg everything to reflect this new reality. And it's super hard and it takes forever. So like when I have a client who's stopping smoking, I tell them to treat it like a breakup, because you're not going to wake up and have that cigarette in the morning. You're not going to have your midday cigarette. You're not going to have your post-dinner cigarette. You're not going to have your goodnight cigarette. You're not going to have your cigarette at parties. You're not going to have your cigarette at a campsite. You're going to have to reorg your entire brain and change the way that it works.
You're not going to get your good morning text from your cigarette. You're not going to do your good night text to your cigarette.
I mean, my cigarette's still texting, but I'm just not answering these.
So these pathways, they're not just about our relationships. They're about like the things we do every day. Like the first time you do a thing, it's so much harder. Practice makes perfect and all that. You know how the first day at a new job takes a million years?
Yeah.
Because you're learning everybody's name. You're learning where your office is. You're learning where the bathroom is. And it just takes so much brain power just to store all this stuff. And I had a job a couple years ago. I came in as a manager of a small team, and it was a very strange building. It was a little chaotic. And every time I had to go to use the restroom, I asked one of my direct reports, can you show me where the bathroom is again? And I found out later, or I figured out, she was taking me a different way to several different bathrooms all day so that I could not learn it. She was doing it on purpose to mess me up because she was being a jerk. I think it's very funny.
I think that's horrible. And that's telling of the relationship that was to come.
Yeah.
So why do you think your brain gets so tired at the beginning of a new job?
Because we've talked about it a little bit before. You are receiving so much more information than you can process.
Right.
And you can't take anything for granted.
Right. You're literally building your brain.
You're building these pathways. You're
Because
building
neurons that fire together, wire together. And so what you're trying to do is literally build huge sections of your brain. And that's exhausting and it takes forever. So redrawing the neural map. So this is from the same article. For many months, even though you know the relationship has changed, your brain's neural map will often lag behind. And that's because your brain favors the implicit knowledge that your partner is everlasting. And it won't update your map just because they haven't been around for a day or two or even several months. Your brain requires ample time and a ton of rumination and lived experience to absorb the absence, update the predictions, and complete this enormous redraw.
Right. Because I had a situation recently where a partner moved out and the first couple of days, it doesn't even really feel like a done deal because they could be on a business trip. They could be out of town. I've spent a week without this person before. There is a second kind of settling when it's been a month and you're like, okay. And the same with dead people, part of your brain is well, they're going to call me on my birthday, but then they don't.
No, I remember when my beautiful cat Toby died for probably a few months, I kept feeling like he was around my ankles. And I remember a pantry door opened and I was like, oh, is that Toby opening the door?
Because that was the likeliest answer to that question just a month ago. Well, and I think we've all had the experience when you do lose someone that you kind of get haunted by them a little bit. You see them every
Absolutely.
place. I definitely saw Dad at Costco.
Yes.
And I wrote you and said, oh, wow, he's not dead. He's just shopping at Costco.
That would be the most likely outcome, actually.
Yeah. I had a very young friend die in Portland. And for months, I was seeing him everywhere.
Yeah.
I was just seeing him everywhere. Anyone who kind of resembled him, my brain would round up.
Right. Because I think it's essentially your brain is a lot like an Etch-a-Sketch. You have the drawings, they're all laid out. And then when this thing happens, it gets all shaken up and we got to do a reorg.
And it's full of potentially toxic lead.
Correct. So you may be wondering.
And it has 2 knobs on it.
My brain hopefully has more than 2 knobs. There's a few things that it does. So what is a neural network? You may find yourself asking. A neural network is a series of connected neurons. So information travels along these networks, enabling us to do things. For example, when you see a ball thrown to you and you try to catch it, sensory neurons in your eyes send a signal along a network that connects to your visual and motor cortices in your brain, and then sends signals to the neurons connected to your arm, your hand, your finger muscles, so you can lift your hands and catch the ball. So the more times you've thrown and caught the ball, the more developed this neural network will become, and the better baseball player you'll be.
Right. And this is for normal people, because if someone throws a ball at me, I will be hit by it and then it will roll away.
Well, then you'll remember what it's like to be hit by a ball. So the next time someone throws a ball, you'll step out of the way.
Right. May have never caught a ball thrown at me in my entire life.
Okay. I don't know if that's
I'm not a sports person.
I'm certain that I've thrown a ball at you at some point. So basically what happens when we have a job or when we have it's any change, any big change. I remember I worked in the same office space for 8 years. And at the last 2 weeks of the month, my landlord said, hey, we sold the building for $2 million and now you have to leave. And so for about, I would say 3 or 4 months, every day I would have to, as I was making the commute, I would have to say, nope, you turn right here, you turn right here, you turn right.
We're not going to the old office. Nope.
Right. Exactly. So what that's called is synaptic pruning. So neurons have dendrites, which are branch-like things that connect with other neurons. The connection between the 2 dendrites is called a synapse. And the connections between the synapses is how information travels in our brain. Synaptic pruning happens when we lose these synapse connections because we do not need them anymore. For instance, if you learned a few words in Spanish in 9th grade, never studied again, those connections that you've made have now been pruned.
Right. That's why you can no longer say definitively whether or not Alberto is in or outside the casa.
Or if he's gone to La Biblioteca. So if you don't need the branches anymore, you cut them off. So that's what happens in connections to your brain. You literally have to use it or you lose it. We have these neural maps that we build with partnerships, with jobs, with, living in Aruba. I mean, actually, that's funny. I feel like when I lived in the UK and when I was married to an English person, I found that I have all these words, I have all these ideas. And until I hear the accent, it's dormant. But as soon as somebody with that accent shows up, then I will immediately move into that language.
Definitely any kind of linguistic thing, like you and I grew up in the south of France. In my day-to-day, I am not a fluent French speaker, but if I spend time with French people, like it all kind of wakes up.
Kind of pops up. Yeah. What I always tell people who are coming to see me to quit whatever behavior X, Y, or Z, I remind them that like when a relationship ends, it takes half the life of the relationship to be truly over the person. And that's because all of your neural networks and all of your pathways have to die. So when I say truly over, I mean like you can see them in a public space and feel nothing. I mean, obviously there's different ways of overcoming it, but yeah, it takes about that long for you to be completely neutral about that person.
You mentioned quitting smoking, which when I quit smoking, the many times I quit, last time for good, the thing I found really interesting that applies is that the physical addiction is done after 3 days. Like this, after 3 days,
72 hours,
nicotine is out of your system. You are no longer experiencing physical cravings, but you have to redefine your self-image as a non-smoker. It is like a relationship, and then you're going from like, I'm defining myself by this partnership to I'm redefining myself as a single person, and I'm going to navigate the world in different ways.
Right. And I have to build all of these new maps in my brain to represent this change.
Sometimes where my neural maps would take me, the last time I quit smoking, it was cloves. Because if you're a goth, it's a big part of your life. And you tell yourself lies, cloves tell you lies like, you could smoke me in the car because I smell like incense. Yeah. But then the next day they smell like cigarettes. And it also tells you lies like, you're not smoking as many of us. It's not as bad for you. And you're not as addicted. Like I would smoke like 1 or 2 cloves a day, but those were very important to me. When I was trying to quit, sometimes I would be driving someplace and I would just wind up in front of the head shop where they sold cloves. I'm like,
Because it's what your brain is used to. That's why changing habits is so incredibly hard. Because you are you're taking the brain you had, you're ripping all the wires out and you're building a whole new set, and it takes forever. So Deborah also says the monumental rewiring job explains a lot of what you're experiencing as we mourn. So like in the case of losing a relationship or losing a person, you're not crazy. Your brain is literally rewiring itself, and you need time to feel whole again, to reinvent your life and to ease into a different future without your partner. So knowing your brain is working so hard can grant you more patience and more self-compassion.
Give yourself a little bit of grace because the work that you're doing is very hard work.
I mean, there really isn't a way to speed it up. The only thing that I have found to be helpful for me, I'm an external processor. So I find for me, when I'm trying to get used to a new reality, I just try to talk about it constantly. I just don't stop talking about it until my brain can start to try to make sense of it.
And I resonate with the fact that talking out your reality helps you reinforce things like, we've compared notes on childhood memories. Like I have memories that are so strong that didn't happen, but it's because people have talked to me about them and I have told stories about them. And your brain just like, well, I guess this is the thing we did.
Well, it's because of this pruning. Like your brain doesn't have room for other stuff. So they're like, okay, we got to clear out this weird thing. This doesn't fit the story. Like there are these 2 Australian therapists, but they talk about this idea that my story about myself creates my reality. So if I have a story that I am a sad loser who's never loved anybody, then I have to erase all of the memories of being loved and loving others to fit my narrative. So I think the brain does do that. It tells us stories about who we are based on whatever our stories are about ourselves.
Right, because your brain wants to be right and your brain wants to confirm your biases and the things you think about yourself and the things you tell about yourself. We have also talked before about the importance at the end of the day, at the end of the week, whatever, look for 3 things that you're grateful for and talk about them. And that kind of builds your brain to find positivity. If you want to be woo-woo about it, it attunes you to the positive.
It's the Bader-Meinhof. It's what I pay attention to creates my reality.
And like when I started doing gratitudes, I was like, isn't this kind of in the category of prayer, right? In prayer, you're supposed to give thanks, but you can also ask for stuff. I find that talking about the things that I am appreciative of and talking about the things that I want, that's why it's important for like goal setting and for achieving. Like no one's ever gotten anywhere without planning to do it.
Yeah. And I think my approach to Santa Claus, I would like a pink horse and I would like the tap shoes that I lost. That sort of thing. I would like a Barbie dream house, please. So there was a longitudinal study done with individuals who were depressed, and they studied them over, I think it was a 20-year period, but for 1 year, they asked them daily to reflect on, either by telling someone else or writing down 3 good things that happened to them each day. And they found that like 10 years out, 20 years out, they didn't suffer from depression as a result of making this minor change into their daily experience.
Right, because it's kind of come from a background where maybe your dad complained all the time. It just became how you went through the world and thought of yourself and thought of the world. You are building yourself into depression and into negativity.
Right.
You're showing your brain, this is the path that I do. This is the button that my cocaine addicted rat presses.
Right. So, Virginia, have you heard of anthropologist Helen Fisher?
I haven't, but she sounds great. Tell me more.
Well, she wrote a really interesting book that I read a number of years ago called Why We Love: The Nature and Chemistry of Romantic Love. She worked on a college campus, and so she would get students who had just started dating and were like in the throes of like early love, and she would have them look at a picture of their partner or their beloved, whatever, and she would have them do an fMRI scan. So do you know what an fMRI scan is?
I know what an MRI scan. What is an fMRI scan?
It's a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine. So it measures brain activity by detecting changes associated with blood flow. So basically what she would do is she would put these kids in an fMRI when they first started dating someone, show pictures of their beloved to them, and watch how their brain reacted. And then at the end of the relationship, she would make them come back. And she did it again.
We've talked before on this podcast about how scientists are evil, and this just proves the point. I wonder how she kept track. Like, you just say to a person in a brand spanking new relationship who's doves, as we've talked about before.
Yes.
And say, hey, cool, we're going to do this study. Hit me back when you break up. And the people go,
we're never breaking up.
We're never breaking up. We're in love now. No, you're going to break up, and then you're going to come back and tell me all about it.
You're going to come back. So yeah, I don't know what her measure was for getting that to happen, but she talks about a particular student named Barbara. She invited Barbara back when her boyfriend, Michael, broke up with her. And she said, Barbara told me that while she had looked at Michael's picture during the experiment, she had recalled all of their arguments. I will never get over him, she burst out, and then exploded into sobs. As she wept, I noticed something else about Barbara. She was furious at me. She glared at me between her tears. Suddenly, she shrieked, why do you want to study this? And so her question, instead of saying, yes, why am I this evil? Her answer was her brain circuitry for passionate romantic love somehow directly connected to the brain networks for what psychologists call hate rage? So what she found was that in the brain, and this is why breakups are so hard, and this is why loss is so hard, because all of the neural networks that were initially lit up by the picture of this person, the same neural networks are getting lit up the same amount. So the way you're obsessing about a new person, that level of obsession is going to continue identically, but with sadness on the other end.
Right. The balance of life. What goes up must come down, and it will come down all over your relationship.
But it comes down at the same pace and volume and speed. Like that intensity that you feel at the front end, you feel the same amount of intensity at the back end.
Wow. But that's a real argument for just okay relationships.
That's a real argument for never dating again.
Right. Well, you know what? This was just okay. And now it's over. And that's just okay too.
I just felt kind of mealy about you. Didn't care. You were just sort of a mid person, whatever.
You sent me a TikTok. Guys, she sometimes sends me TikToks, and I sometimes send her TikTok. And by sometimes, I mean every day. So you sent me a TikTok about approaching your relationships, love relationships with positivity, right? And the guy was saying, in studies, couples who assumed the best about each other, who assumed good intentions, just had better experiences in the relationships than couples who assumed the worst. He had the example, something that I've experienced. Sometimes when you're leaving the house and a little wind gets behind the door and kind of shuts it. And if that happens in a happy relationship, the person will say like, oh, that sounded windy. And in a bad relationship, your brain will go, well, that piece of crap, slamming the door because they're so angry with me. Unfortunately, in my experience, good relationships become bad relationships. Like you wouldn't be there if you'd always had negativity towards this person, but you've maybe the both of you have gotten in bad habits of not expecting the best out of the other person.
Well, and I think also having recurrent difficulties.
Negative experiences, yeah.
Right? If I am experiencing every day that you're leaving the toothpaste cap off, eventually that is going to irritate me. And it's going to make me start to feel like it's personal. So John Gottman has that assessment thing about the way that I view my partner. And I see, maybe neutral things. I was working in a couples workshop, and there was a couple that had been married for 50 years. God bless them. And so we were talking about topics that might seem stupid or minimal. And so I said, so what is your topic? And she said, every morning without fail, I make a pot of coffee. He pours himself a cup. He spills 2 to 3 drops on the counter and leaves a ring every day.
Every GD day. I can't believe that man is still alive.
Well, and the worst part is he had no idea that this was a problem. She'd never brought it up.
Because it seems silly to bring it up. And yet, when it happens again and again and again,
it feels personal.
It feels, you can ascribe the intention, because part of you has to be like, this can't be an accident.
What are the statistical odds that every day spills 3 drops of coffee on the counter in the same spot, leaves a ring, and never wipes it up?
Right.
That's got to be personal. So what she talks about as sort of the misery of the back end of a relationship, the rejected person must deal with new forms of torture, resignation, and despair. Scientists believe that the very high metabolic and social cost of depression is actually a benefit. One's depression is an honest, believable sign to others that something is desperately wrong. Hence, depression evolved, they say, to enable our stressed ancestors to signal for and acquire social support in times of intense need.
Oh, wow. So all of the Morrissey listening and black sweater wearing and doldrums is for safety.
Yeah, it's to keep you alive. Because I think if there's nothing physically wrong with you, it doesn't seem obvious to others that they need to rush in and protect you. So yeah, Dr. Fisher purports that this is part of our, biological makeup. This is part of why we have survived. And I think that's fascinating.
It is fascinating. You think of it as a bug, but it's a feature. Right. We've selected towards people who express depression and distress in a physical, like an outward way.
Right. And we do that for things like ruptures in their life. Because if I wasn't, like she was describing this poor woman, Barbara, who she was torturing, she was saying Barbara, had matted hair and hadn't been eating and hadn't, just looked horrible and couldn't really get her head up off the desk.
Barbara was having a hard time.
Well, you saw me at the end of my last relationship. I was having a very hard time. It was very hard for me to get my head around this happening because I did not see it coming. And I just felt like my whole Etch-a-Sketch had been kicked and broken. My Etch-a-Sketch was on the ground.
Graphite all over the ground. But I never saw you have matted hair, which is good for you.
I always bathe, even in the depths of depression, because my hair is way too greasy to not bathe. So, Virginia, what are your takeaways from this delightful convo?
Well, this has been really interesting, and I hope that the listener finds it interesting. Just the degree to which our experiences are written in the brain. And, as much as like, I've had the feeling of like, I want to get over this person. I want to get over this thing. And knowing that I have no control over that, all I can really do is pretend that I'm over it is freeing in a way. But also it's a reminder to, as Bobby McFerrin once so famously said, don't worry, be happy. And you are going to worry. But like, if you can try to be positive, that will generate more. If you generate optimism, you will make more optimism. If you generate pessimism, you will make more pessimism.
Right. And also, like when my last relationship ended, I had written him a goodbye letter. So I needed to sit and unpack all of these thoughts and feelings that were coming at me at the same time and make sense of them and really start, because you were saying earlier, what can a person do about this? I think the only thing you can do about it is live in reality, not avoid, don't start drinking, don't, try to eat a bunch of food, don't do all these avoidant behaviors and actively engage with your emotions as they happen.
Thank you. That's great advice. Not to be a hippie, but like, I really believe in trying to find the positive in things because this is a hard world. And sometimes it feels like it's only getting harder and it feels very easy to give up. And that's not going to help nobody. You have to find the good in your friendships, in your relationships, in your work, in your life. You got to dig for it sometimes.
You do. And also you have to really lean hard into reality and not try to be in fantasy about what could happen or how things could change. Instead, just reminding yourself, okay, I lost that job at Tom Thumb. Now I need to pick myself up and stop thinking about, my coworkers and my schedule and all the crap that I used to think about and start thinking about what the next thing is.
Laura, what are your last thoughts on this topic?
So my final thoughts are, although there's no way to technically speed up this process, you can use hypnosis. That's what I find hypnosis is really useful for when I'm trying to make a big change in my life. When you're listening to hypnosis, your brain is actually rebuilding itself. You're building new neural networks because your brain is convinced that this thing that you're experiencing in hypnosis is happening in reality. So as you're listening to, a hypnosis recording of you living your life without cigarettes, for example, your brain is getting more and more used to this new reality and kind of developing around that.
And if you're interested in getting hypnosis to help you with your neural networks from Laura personally, you can visit with her at anewdayhypnosis.com.
As long as you live in the state of Texas.
As long as you live in the state of Texas. But yeah, I don't do hypnosis, as you know, but I have had the same benefit from journaling, from gratitudes. I don't keep a gratitude journal, but I guess that would be the ultimate matching of the two. By writing out the things that I'm thinking about, I do think to myself, oh, I can't wait to do my morning pages and work this out because It is how I do stuff.
Because you are also an external processor.
Right. Laura, where can people find you on the internet apart from www.anewdayhypnosis.com?
Well, they can find me on my therapy website, lauraryan.org. They can also find me on TikTok. I am Laura Ryan, or they can reach out to our website. If you have a question or praise or just something about how great we are, you can reach out to hello@mysistersatherapist.com. And Virginia, where can people find you?
Thank you. We'd also like to encourage people to, if you have any overflowing positive thoughts about the podcast, you can always write us a review on Apple, which we love reading and which we put in our gratitude journals. You can find me on the internet at www.badinia.com. My TikTok is Badinia, and that's also my Instagram. All things Badinia mostly hook back to me.
And if you're looking to hire us for your women's conference,
wedding or bar mitzvah.
We do bat mitzvahs, yes, 100%. You can go to hire us at mysistersatherapist.com and send us an email. Yeah, and also if you meet anyone on the street who appears to have a smartphone, tell them to listen to our podcast because we're at 82 in Singapore, but we're gaining fast.
We're climbing, dude. Thank you so much for listening to us. That brings us to our segment, Laura Reads a Review.
Here's an Apple review left graciously by Gracie77. Thank you, Gracie. Gracie said, a delightful mental health themed pod that brings both heart and laughs to the table. Really fun listen. Well done.
Thank you, Gracie. That feels good.
That does feel good.
Thank you for listening. We hope you come back again. And remember, in the words of Trading Places, Billy Ray Valentine, we can make it, baby.
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.